what I wanted to do was to focus on the function of learning as being linked with renewal. I think that I know we will have colleagues coming from maybe a counselling or a clinical perspective, and I know that many of them will be really interested in working with their clients to bring about progress and growth. And I think that sometimes in education we might lose sight of the underlying purpose, in my view, of what learning's about, which is one of growth. So I suppose I would argue that learning is an innate feature of human experience. It's the way in which we express our desire not to survive, but to thrive. And I think this is a difference I want to focus on over this next hour. Really, is that this is about thriving, not surviving. That we're here to do more than just survive, and we can describe that in terms of thriving, and that learning is one of the universal ways in which we express our desire to thrive. Really leads me into introducing one of the words I mentioned in the blurb, which is that of natality. And I just want to linger on this word for a bit, because natality is a relatively unusual word in the English language. People may have come across it, but there isn't a great deal written about it or discussed. And I want to linger on it because I think it's potentially a really rich concept for educators. So natality is at the other end of the continuum, where we've got mortality. And that often we will be encouraged to and think of ourselves existentially as mortals. That the frame of mortality is what tends to hang over us and to guide us in thinking about how we're going to survive. But thinking of ourselves as natals invites a different way of framing human experience, and it brings greater attention to some of the features that we align with natality. And one of the features on natality and the fact of our being natals is that we were born, quite obviously. No one is born alone. It's because of our natal experience that we are relational. And mortality. And many people die alone. It's very sad, but they do. You can't be born alone. You are always in the presence of at least someone, and you are there as a result of the connection between the two that started us at conception. So natality, at its very heart, is relationship. So that's one of the key features of natality, is that it's relational, and that it also emphasises embodiment. So mortality encourages us to think about our mind or our spirit being separate from our body, whereas when we take account of ourselves as natals, that's a much more holistic account of the person. So I've really been interested in looking at natality and its implications for educators, because natality encourages us to think increasingly about what is it that I'm inheriting here? What have I been born into? And that's where learning comes. Really important. Because education, in some respects, is a process whereby I'm invited to consider what I've been born into. What's my inheritance? What's come before? And how do I innovate and use this to thrive again? So that's why I wanted to bring people's attention to natality. It's not a conventional model. Most conventional models of development look a little bit like this. I wonder if I can hold up a piece of paper. This will be a very simple thing to describe. That we're born, that we go through various stages, we hit the craziness of adolescence, after which we're grown up, and then we die. That most ideas about development look like this. They're linear, and they're chronologically orientated. And what Levin introduced was an idea that the way in which we grow up isn't linear, but it's cyclic, and that there are a range of really core stages in which we experience belonging, exploration, the capacity to think, build up a sense of self, and practice as being a social animal, and that those stages are repeated over a course of a lifetime, not just in childhood. So it's not a childhood development model, and that
development all the way through the life of the human.
Quite, yeah. And so a more accurate way of drawing someone's life is more like a spiral. That consequently the implications of that as a model are quite far-reaching, because it turns on its head the idea that you've got it all sorted out by the time you're 3 years old or 7 years old, because this is a model that indicates that you go round again and again, that we're going to revisit those stages. So this has implications for those of us who are teachers, who might be talking about a 10-year-old when we're saying, oh, it's all too late, because that's speaking from a linear model of growth. The other thing we notice is that adolescence is a time where the individual naturally returns to those early stages. So for those of us working with adolescents, it's a really exciting time of growth.
So and there's also opportunity in the return to the stage then.
Yes. And what's more, John, is that although the stages are naturally recurring, recycling, what we notice is that any significant transition triggers a revisiting of those stages. So, for example, if we've got teachers on board at the moment, that they will notice that next term, certainly in the UK system, those oldest children in year 11 will start to have a wobble. These 15, 16-year-olds will start to behave in a way that some people say is very regressed, for example. And one way of making sense of that is that they're reaching the threshold of a recycling, because they are just about to go through a transition in which they're challenged about how will I belong in the adult world. If I'm going to college or into training of some sort, that sense of do I belong here? Am I welcome? Can I ask questions? How will I get there? And the whole business of living independently ricochets us back to that early stage of belonging. So, and I don't mean just children and young people. If people listening in think about last time they started a new job, they may well have been in their 30s, but will have experienced in those first few days a sense of, do I belong here? That sense of belonging isn't a one-off in early infancy.